Hello you guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. It's been a hot minute since I've been here. I'm guessing you're tuning in because of the subject of this video and you're probably studying for your NASM Certified Personal Trainer test, and if you are, welcome, and if you aren't, also welcome. But this video is geared towards how I took and passed the exam less than 24 hours ago. This is my fancy piece of paper so far that says that I passed and I did it, so once again, welcome. My name is Gianna. I graduated with my Bachelor's of Science in Human Nutrition and Dietetics just over a year ago. I just completed my dietetic internship, decided I wanted to sit for the Nasm Cpt exam while I'm waiting, and also studying to take my licensure exam to be a registered dietitian. So while I was studying for the Nasm Cpt exam, I truly just was searching YouTube for tips, tricks, how do people remember these things, because there's a lot. This is the study guide. So essentially I wanted to make this video today to kind of walk through the study guide and kind of give you guys any tips and tricks and mnemonic devices that I came up with that helped me study and pass for my exam. I did take about 4 weeks to truly study for the exam. The last 2 weeks were probably a little more intense, where pretty much all I did was study. But I did want to give you guys my tips, tricks, things that I found helpful, things that I found on the exam. So let's start by going through the study guide. You guys can find this towards the end of the online portal, whatever Nasm's thing is. I had the self-study package, so it's the most basic one that you can have. I took the 6 domain quizzes. I took each of those 3 times, and then I took the final practice test twice. I will say the only chapters that I read all the way through were chapters 6, 7, 10, and 14. That does not mean that that's all that you should do. I did have previous knowledge also as a disclaimer on all things nutrition, and so I also did have a good base knowledge of kind of how the body works and more of the scientific side of things and the nervous systems and stuff. So I did not spend as long on those because for my bachelor's degree, I had to take all these classes, you know, anatomy, physiology, chemistry, biology, biochemistry, things like that. So I did have that baseline knowledge, so use that what you will, but those are the couple chapters that I did read all the way through, and definitely do recommend at least reading all of those all the way through. I personally learn best by practicing what I'm learning, and so I did use the Pocket Prep app for the Nasm Cpt. Later in the video, I'm kind of going to go over that and why I liked it. And then, yeah, I just pretty much used the study guide, Mnemonic Devices that I made up from the study guide, and the Pocket Prep app. So as I go through this study guide with you guys, I'm going to point out things that I personally saw on my exam, things that you need to know to either be able to pick out the incorrect answers or the correct answers, obviously. I do recommend that you at least, I read this through all the way through at least 10 times, so I do recommend that you at least go through this a couple times and just have a general understanding of truly everything in here, which can seem really overwhelming, but I'm not saying memorize it. I'm just saying have enough of it in your brain to at least kind of recognize and not go I have no idea what they're asking about. If they're asking something about the peripheral nervous system, at least recognize what that is, if that makes sense. So let's go through here. Definitely know the nervous systems, the central, peripheral, and I didn't have any questions on the subdivisions of them. Definitely know the difference between type 1 and type 2 muscle fibers. I had multiple questions on that. Know skeletal system functions. Definitely know the cardiorespiratory system. I had 4 questions on this. Know the blood flow through the heart for sure. Also know arteries, veins, and capillaries. I remember arteries carry the blood away by thinking arteries start with an A, away. So that's how I remember that. For blood flow through the heart, I remembered it when I learned this back in high school. A comes before V, so the atria and then the ventricles, and know that it starts on the right and goes right atria, right ventricle, and then it goes to the lungs, comes back in, and then goes to the rest of your body. Know that, you know, basic understanding that the lungs oxygenate the blood that then gets pumped to the rest of your body. Definitely know the energy systems. It's on page 5, but know that it's this little chart down here. Know that the ATP-PC system lasts about 10 to 15 seconds. Glycolysis is 30 to 50, and then the oxidative is that long-term energy source. Know all the anatomic locations. You really do have to like have all these memorized, and not only memorized, but understand them. That's page 6 of the study guide. Also, you need to pretty much know everything on page 7. It's the planes of motion. So you have the frontal, sagittal, and transverse. Also, you need to know like different like motions or examples of what you do in each of those. Like the frontal plane is where like side lunges happen. Also, you need to know all your joint motions. So like flexion, extension, adduction, abduction. A couple years ago when I was learning this first, I always got confused with abduction and adduction. Abduction has the B in it, and when I think B, I associated with the word by, and when I'm saying by, I'm going away, and so abduction is going away from your body. So that's how I remember that. You also definitely need to know concentric, eccentric, and isometric actions. I remember concentric because I think contracting, and when you contract, it shortens. So concentric is where your muscle shortens. That's how I remember that. No, forced couple relationships. You really have to know, like thoroughly understand and know examples of autogenic inhibition, reciprocal inhibition, altered reciprocal inhibition, synergistic dominance, and then also know muscle imbalance, postural distortion patterns, and relative flexibility. You definitely need to know all the levels of the OPT models and different exercises that go in there. Definitely understand motor learning, sensory motor integration, have a full understanding and know like proprioception. Definitely have a general understanding of internal and external feedback. Have a general understanding of carbohydrates. Like I said, I didn't have a ton of nutrition questions on my exam, and truly I didn't spend a lot of time on this, like I said before, but the question that I did have was like, I guess I had two, like a specific protein recommendation for a specific group. So definitely know, that's on page 13 of the study guide, this chart at the bottom. Know protein recommendations for different categories. Understand resting metabolic rate, the thermic effect of food, and energy expended during physical activity. Know what kind of advice you can give as a certified personal trainer and when to refer out to a registered dietitian. Definitely know the caffeine recommendations. That's on page 15. Know how to calculate maximal heart rate. That's super important. Also, you need to super know the 3 zones of heart rate. Know resting heart rate. Know when you take it, where you take it. Also, definitely have a thorough understanding of blood pressure. So systolic over diastolic. I just like remember that as like SD. So systolic over diastolic. Know the healthy measurements, but also know like the diastolic is when the heart is filling. I remember that like D down, like that's like the heart's downtime. So that's how I remember it. Know like the different BMI levels. So know like overweight, obesity. Know the 4 sites for the skin fold measurements. Know how to calculate fat mass and lean mass. Understand the different ways to take that. Definitely know the waist to hip ratios for women and men. A huge chunk, which I'm sure if you've watched other videos that people are talking about, is obviously pronation distortion syndrome, upper cross syndrome, and lower cross syndrome. I did not personally memorize like each thing that's on here, but I did just have a general understanding of like what that syndrome was, which I got from reading the book. And then I was able to, when prompted with a question, say, okay, well, if my feet are pronated, like what's going to be short and what's going to be long. So that was just a little much for me to memorize. I got pretty overwhelmed with that, so I just tried to have a general understanding, and it worked out well for me. Know that BMI is a person's weight compared to their height. Also, you definitely need to know, this is page 21 of the study guide, all the different tests. So you have the Davies test, the Shark Skill test, bench press, squat, push-up, and left test. And then, not gonna lie, you need to know all of the overhead squat assessment. So I started this by breaking it down. So you have what you assess for the overhead squat assessment. You have the lateral view, and then you have an anterior view. So I started by learning the lateral, and then went to anterior. The single leg squat assessment was on there actually quite a bit as well, but it's the same as like the overactive and underactive muscles from the overhead squat assessment. Also, I did have a general understanding of the pushing assessment, so that's all in this study guide, which I thought the study guide did a really good job of like giving me the tables, and then I created mnemonic devices for them. So I'm actually going to go through the whole study guide and then go back and show you guys my mnemonic devices that I used. Let's see. Definitely no adjustments for pregnancy, obesity. I had a couple questions on those. Know what a fitness professional, so certified personal trainer, does not do, which is essentially like diagnose medical conditions, prescribe diets. That's what a dietitian does. You don't provide mental health counseling. Yep. Know when reassessments would happen. Flexibility was huge. I had a lot of questions on flexibility. So it's page 26 of the study guide. It's like the beginning of domain 3. Know corrective flexibility, active flexibility, functional flexibility. Know which phases of the OPT model those fit in. Know, it's kind of a joke that the NASM podcast, I forgot to mention that, I use that a lot as well. They joke, it's like the answer is foam rolling. And that really is. So self-myofascial release, static stretching, active isolated stretching, and dynamic stretching. So know what those are, what phases of the OPT model they fit in, and examples of those. I remembered like the progression of like where you start in phase 1 of the OPT model to phase 5. I remembered it as CAF, so CAF. It goes corrective, active, and then functional. Corrective is phase 1, and then 2, 3, and 4 are active, and 5 is functional. I'm pretty sure. Double check me on that. Definitely know for like the resistance training systems, you need to know every single one of these systems, like the single set, multiple set, pyramid, superset, drop set, circuit. There's a part in the study guide that goes over like the special populations, so like obesity, cardiovascular, osteoporosis. Know which ones are not recommended for those training groups. And then this is what I was talking about earlier, that you need to know the exercises that happen in these phases. So like these are resistance, it says resistance exercises right here in the study guide, and it has like stabilization, so that's phase 1, and then phase 2, 3, 4, and then phase 5, and gives you examples. It like goes on to the next page of examples of those, and I had a ton of questions on like which exercises belonged in each phase. And that's for resistance, that's for core, balance, resistance, core, and balance, I think, and plyometric. Do I have any more? So resistance, core, balance, and plyometric, you need to know what exercises happen in which phase of the OPT model. Tons. I mean, probably a good quarter, maybe that's a little high. 20-ish, 15-20% of my exam was asking like, what kind of exercise is this? And you have to know where it goes. Know the 3 stages of training. Know what bracing is, like what muscles are included. So it's your abdominals, lower back, and glutes. So I just kind of think they're all really close together, so that makes sense in my brain. Let's see here. So when I mentioned proprioception earlier, you need to know the progression. So on page 31 of the study guide, it gives you like the progression of like where it goes from. So it's like floor, balance beam, half roll, foam pad, balances, wall board, BOSU board. And then you also need to know like progressions. So like if you're doing an arm exercise, you start 2 arms and then you alternate and then you do single arm. And then the floor is you start with 2 legs and then you stagger and then you do 1 leg. And then after that, that's when you add in something like a foam pad or a balance disc or a BOSU ball. So that's page 31 again. Definitely good to read through that one because you will get, I had multiple questions on like what would be a regression or a progression from one of those points. So you need to know where they go. Amortization phase, the top of page 32, definitely know that one. You also need to understand what speed, agility, and quickness is. Understand general adaptation system, the alarm reaction, resistance development, and exhaustion, and kind of what happens in each of those. Also the principle of specificity or specific adaptation to impose demands, so this SAID principle, SAID principle. So you have mechanical specificity, I struggle with this word, neuromuscular and metabolic specificity. Also understand training plans. You start with high volume, low intensity, and then progress to low volume, high intensity. Also know the different like plans. You have the microcycle, mesocycle, and macrocycle. And then this was another big one. Starts page 35, the acute variables of the study guide. I primarily focused on learning the reps, sets, tempo, and rest intervals. And I did this by actually cutting them out and then laying them like on top of each other on my table. And then I don't have a ton of, this is like just like a memorization thing. You just need to know this. I just found it helpful to like lay these out on top of each other and find the common ones in each of them. So I really recommend doing that also. You can like pretty easily pick up the patterns between them. Another big thing that I had a couple questions on was knowing like what happens when you're doing high volume and low intensity adaptations or low volume and high intensity. So it's on the top of page 38, and it gives you like 3 bullet points for each on what happens there. Know the FIT principle, like what it stands for: frequency, intensity, time, type, and enjoyment. Know signs of overtraining. And then like I was saying, the special populations, like things to adjust, starts on page 40. I would just have a general understanding, like be able to recognize this. I didn't memorize this, but I did have probably a question on each special population that was in here. Know feedback, know what external feedback and internal feedback is and examples of those. And then know how to best explain an exercise to a client. So it's tell, show, and do. Know where to spot a client exercising. So spot at the client's wrists, not the elbows, especially when using a dumbbell. And then never spot a machine-based exercise by placing your hands underneath the weight stack. That just sounds painful to me. Definitely understand active listening, open-ended questions, and reflecting, and be able to identify examples of those. Definitely know what SMART goals are: specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely, and be able to identify examples of these also. Be able to recognize what's unrealistic for a client and only set goals that are SMART, like SMART. And then definitely know what an intrinsic approach is. Know the forms of support. So you have instrumental, emotional, informational, and companionship, and like what that looks like. So like if a parent is driving their child to the gym because that's the only way they can get there, or that would be, you know, more instrumental support, where as opposed to like if a parent is working out with their child, that's companionship. So know common barriers to exercise. Know the 4 P's of marketing: product, price, place, and promotion. Also definitely know, this is like the easiest thing to remember for the test, that fitness professionals are required to renew their CPR certification and obtain 2 continuing education units and complete the recertification application every 2 years. So that is the study guide, and then we'll go back to the overactive muscles really fast. You know, like these mnemonic devices were made by me because they made sense in my head. They may not make sense in your head. So feel free to take these mnemonic devices. I also like really recommend trying to create ones for yourself because I think it sticks more that way. But if you're like, nope, I want to use yours, go for it. So for the overhead squat assessment, you have the lateral view. So you have the lumbo-pelvic hip complex and the upper body that are checkpoints from the lateral view. And so for the lumbo-pelvic hip complex, you have excessive forward lean and low back arches. And so I remembered excessive forward lean. I'll pop the mnemonic device up on the screen here as some girls hit abs and get excited. So the overactive muscles are some girls hit abs, and then underactive are and get excited. And I wish somebody would have said this in one of their reviews. Overactive muscles are short and need to be stretched. Underactive muscles are long and need to be strengthened. That like clicked for me, and that made everything make so much more sense, and I didn't see anybody say that in their video, so I'll say it again. Overactive muscles are short and need to be stretched. Underactive muscles are long and need to be strengthened. So some girls hit abs, overactive, and get excited, underactive. So that's how I remembered it. If you want to use it, go for it. Let's see, the next one is low back arches. So this one this one and the next one probably make the least sense, but they made sense in my brain. So it's her exercise led, grow hamstrings immediately. I think this is the only one that I made that actually correlates to like what it is, but that's how I remembered it. Her exercise led, grow hamstrings immediately. So there's that. And then upper body, arms fall forward. I remembered it by leaving the peckers pecking might leave rats running. And so when you look at this on the chart, you're like, but there's only 3 spaces. So it's leaving latissimus dorsi, the teres major, peckers pecking. I personally picked this one because then I think pectoralis, and you have your pectoralis major and minor for overactive, and then underactive is might leave, so middle trapezius, lower trapezius, and then rats running, rhomboids, and rotator cuff. Could not tell you. This is just the first things that came to my brain, so I stuck with it. And then for feet, your feet turn out. This one doesn't make sense either. It's some like butter, soleus, lateral gastrocnemius, biceps femoris, short head for overactive, and then most men give some presence. So you have medial gastrocnemius, medial hamstring complex, gracilis, sartorius, popliteus. So that's how I remembered that one. And then this one literally makes no sense. It's just what stuck in my brain. So for knees move inward, you have all boys think Vegas, girls go Vegas. Couldn't tell you why, but adductor complex, biceps femoris, tensor fasciae lata, and vastus lateralis. So all boys think Vegas for overactive muscles, and then underactive, gluteus maximus, gluteus medius, vastus medialis oblique. So girls go Vegas. So that's just kind of how I remembered it. Like I said, the single leg squat, I was really overwhelmed when I looked at this study guide, and it was like all these things that I needed to memorize. But then when you really look at it, like the single leg squat assessment, the compensation is knees move inward as well. And it's literally the exact same as knees move inward for the overhead squat. So that's kind of how I remembered it. I didn't have anything on the gait assessment. For the pushing and pulling assessment, they're actually, I think, almost exactly the same. Let's see. They are, pushing and pulling are the exact same. So just try to memorize one of them. But like I said, as you understand this more, it like kind of makes more sense where you don't necessarily need to memorize. But like I said, I will leave a link in the description box of all the mnemonic devices that I used. And then I also obviously popped them up on the screen while I was doing them, but I hope that helps. The last thing I think I want to talk about, unless I remember something later and then I'll add it in, I used obviously the online portal through Nasm to study. I'm pretty sure I already said this, but I took each domain quiz 3 times. I took the final practice test twice, and then I used the Pocket Prep Fitness Study Prep app. They kind of just rebranded, and so it was kind of confusing. I'm not going to try to show you guys because it's not going to focus and it won't make any sense, but I'm going to pop up a video right here as I talk about it, so you guys can see what I'm talking about. It was $18, I think, $17, $18, but what I really liked about it is, one, it shows you your progress as you go through, and like these questions that I was answering in the app were the same questions that were popping up on the domains, like quizzes and the practice test. So I felt it was very spot on, but I also like it shows you the 6 domains, and so it shows you where you're scoring in each domain, which I really liked. It kind of shows you how you're doing overall. There's 800 questions for you to answer. I got through almost all of them. Let's see, I answered 503 of them. So I really like that you can do like a quick 10 quiz, a timed quiz. My 2 favorite features though, you can also build your own quiz and customize it however you want, but my 2 favorite features were the missed questions quiz. So any questions you missed during all of the quizzes that you take, you can literally just click missed questions quiz, and then it will take you through all the questions you missed. And then they also have weakest subject quiz. So like my weakest subject was exercise technique and training instruction, because there was just so much to remember. And so I really liked those 2 options. And then you can customize, you can do like 1 question, you can do 100, you can do 5. So I really liked that. They also have question of the day that you can do, which is nice. And then for me, how I learn is I read those couple chapters, 6, 7, 10, and 14. But for me, how I learn is by practicing it. So I would do the questions, and what I love about this app, which I did not get from doing like the practice quizzes on the Nasm portal, is they tell you like why the answer is correct or incorrect, and then they also give you the page number in the book. So like things that I was repeatedly like clearly not understanding because I was getting them wrong, I was able to then go look it up in the book and read that section rather than trying to read every single chapter of the book and not understanding it. So I really liked that. But then I also learned by obviously practicing, which I've said a billion times now, but then by reading why I was correct or incorrect. I read it either way. Unless it was like a question that I knew like right off the bat, no hesitation. But anytime I hesitated, I read like why it was correct or why it was incorrect, and that really helped me. So that's pretty much the gist of things. I hope this helped. I'm also happy to answer any questions or share any other resources I may think of. So if you guys have any questions, pretty please let me know, comment them below, and I can answer them. I do hope this helped. I wish you all tons of luck and hope you pass and become a NASM certified personal trainer as well. And in the meantime, please let me know if you have any questions. You can follow me on Instagram. I'll pop it like right here and a direct link in the bio below. But yeah, if anybody has any questions, please let me know, and I hope you all have a wonderful day and good luck studying.